Hi, and welcome back to this Tuesday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, and amiable, as always, host. One of the stories that's been in the news in American politics over the last weekend or so is a dust-up in the Chris McDaniel campaign against incumbent Thad Cochran. Senator Cochran has been in Washington, D.C. for 41 years, wants to be reelected for another term. Chris McDaniel is a Tea Party guy that's risen up to challenge him. And according to the latest polls I have seen, he has now pulled ahead of Thad Cochran. Here is one released yesterday by the Citizens United Political Victory Fund that shows that Chris McDaniel is leading Thad Cochran 43-39. There's another poll that has him up by 7 points, 43-36, which is outside the margin for error. So obviously this is a very close race. It's a very competitive race. And Chris McDaniel, the Tea Party guy, obviously has a good chance to win this race. Now, one of the issues that's popped up is an issue over a blogger completely independent of the McDaniel campaign that took video and photographs of Senator Cochran's wife, who is in a nursing home facility and has been since 2000. That's a reprehensible thing for a human being to do, to go in there and take photographs of this vulnerable, helpless individual, plaster it on the internet. And as soon as the McDaniel campaign found out about this, they had nothing to do with it. This individual was on his own, didn't work for the campaign, didn't report to the campaign, wasn't taking directions from the campaign. As soon as they found out about it, they did everything they could to find out who was responsible and to get that thing taken down, and they got it done in a matter of a couple hours. They left no stone unturned to find out who was behind it and to get that thing pulled down, and it was done. Now, it's interesting that Senator Cochran has known about this incident for 3 weeks. But for some reason, Senator Cochran did not go to the police until just last Friday. And it creates the suspicion that the Cochran campaign was kind of holding on to this little piece of information till late in the campaign to try to knock Chris McDaniel off his stride. It's kind of the classic October surprise strategy. So more to come on that. But the main thing I think it's important for people to understand, and this would include those that like Senator Cochran and intend to vote for him. I know we got people in this listening audience that will do that, and that's fine, that appreciate Senator Cochran. I'm not trying to talk anybody out of anything here. But for both sides, those that support Chris McDaniel, those that support Thad Cochran, it's important for folks to understand that this blogger had nothing to do with the McDaniel campaign, and that they were the ones, it was the McDaniel campaign that was responsible for having the photograph and the video pulled down off of the internet. So we'll see how all of that plays out. It's going to be very competitive, and what these polls are indicating, this is going to be touch and go. It's going to be right down to the wire. Now, one of the ways in which the Cochran campaign has gone after Chris McDaniel is by accusing him of being basically an ambulance chaser, being a trial lawyer, which is the scourge of the earth for conservatives. They've even put an ad out going after Chris McDaniel for being a trial lawyer. Here's how it sounds.
Meet the real Chris McDaniel, a personal injury class action trial lawyer, using the courts to seek an enormous payday, pleading with a jury, winning over $25 million in just one case. Mississippi conservatives passed reforms to end these massive paydays, but McDaniel argued with the court to throw out the reforms so he could score big money. It's not right, but it's what trial lawyers like McDaniel do to get rich. The U.S. Chamber is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Now, that was the ad prepared by the Cochran campaign going after Chris McDaniel. You notice the U.S. Chamber of Commerce paid for that. Now, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they are big ruling class Republicans, establishment Republicans. They're putting $50 million into primary campaigns to try to defeat conservative challengers like Chris McDaniel, conservative challengers to sitting incumbents. They're throwing a lot of money at this. The chamber is behind the push for amnesty. They're promising Republican candidates a lot of money in their campaign coffers if they'll only go for amnesty. That's why there's going to be a push to try to get something done this summer, because the chamber wants some results before they give money to Republicans in time for the November election. So we'll watch and see how that unfolds. But I'm honored and pleased in response to this criticism of Chris McDaniel that he is a trial lawyer. Honored and pleased to welcome to our Focal Point studio Billy Jack McDaniel, who's a first cousin of Chris McDaniel. Billy Jack, welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for having me and giving me the opportunity to actually tell the truth.
All right, well, let's get into that. Let's tell people the truth about Chris McDaniel as the supposed ambulance-chasing trial lawyer. Tell us your story.
On March 3rd, I was blown up in an oil rig accident. I'm burned on 95% of my body, over third degree. March the 4th, when Chris McDaniel came to my hospital room, what he saw laying there was undescribable. That's his words, undescribable. His first cousin is laying there. He took my wife's hand. He said, everything's going to be okay. You take care of Jack. I will figure this out. Chris McDaniel chose that fight. He chose to put his law firm, his career, he chose that fight. Brian, in Mississippi, people run to their families when they're in need. They don't run away. This man is being crucified for stepping up, digging in, fighting against the largest industry, the largest insurance companies in the world, and ensuring that I had a future. This was not a short wham bam and I'm out of here. This was a 4.5, 5-year battle that this man sacrificed everything for.
So Billy Jack, you're talking about Chris coming into your hospital room and you a victim of a terrible oil rig explosion, and you're lying there burned over 95% of your body.
Yes, sir.
And Chris McDaniel is a member of your family.
Yes.
And so he wanted to help you out of his commitment to you as a member of his family. This wasn't about chasing an ambulance, tracking you down on a hospital bed in a vulnerable place, not knowing you, trying to talk you into letting...
My wife called him. My wife called him and said, Chris, you need to come see this. And you can imagine there was a long list of people to call. Never dreaming Chris would take the case because that wasn't who he was. That's not what he did. But he chose that fight. Brian, if you don't fight for your family, you will not fight for anything.
And so what you're saying, Billy Jack, is you look at what Chris McDaniel did, State Senator Chris McDaniel did in your case, and this was something he wasn't doing for money. He was doing it to minister and help a member of his family. And you're indicating there was a considerable amount of exposure or risk for him. I'm guessing you probably weren't in position to provide a lot of resources to him up front to fund this thing. So there's a risk for him, I take it, going forward.
Yeah, he put his whole law firm at risk. And they dug in. Him, Gene Harlow, everybody there dug in. My medical records wouldn't fit in 2 U-Haul trucks. They were everywhere. And I wrote my story. Chris McDaniel wrote the foreword of Dead Man Breathing. There it is. He's tied to this story, and the truth is in this story. It's not a TV ad. It's not a radio ad that I can edit and change. It's in print, and I encourage people, if you want to know the truth, Dead Man Breathing is where you can find that.
Now, Billy, let me ask you another question here, because we've got a lot of, and I understand the outrage from the Cochran family, absolutely, completely. What was done to a member of their family, absolutely outrageous, reprehensible, horrible. No excuse for that. And, the reason that is an outrage here in what was done to Senator Cochran's family is this involved a member of his family. It involved his wife. Now, I would think maybe, Billy Jack, in your part, there would be a similar kind of outrage directed against those that are trying to use this for political purposes, because you're a member of Chris's family.
Yeah.
This was about family. So I would think you may have some similar outrage over the way this is being used for political purposes.
Family is off limits, Brian. It doesn't matter. Family's off limits. And the last day of our court, the judge told everyone in the courtroom that a dollar amount and my name can never be associated with each other anywhere for the safety of my daughter. So now I have the Daily Beast. I have these other organizations knocking on my door in the state of North Carolina, where I had to move to the mountains so I could live. And they're asking me, did you get this money? How much did Chris get paid?
Well, that's a good question. How much did Chris get paid?
As far as, personally, it's none of my business what he got paid. But as I can't find where he got anything. Now, his law firm got paid, but I can't find where Chris McDaniel took anything. But, you know, I make the joke, asking somebody how much money they make is kind of like asking them what color underwear their wife wears. You just don't do that, you know.
Now, one other question, Billy Jack, we're getting close to the end of the segment here, but did you get what you needed out of the work that Chris McDaniel did for you in order to get the kind of rehabilitation and treatment that you needed?
Well, there's no good way to answer that, Brian. First of all, it's not enough. For what I went through, it's not enough. I would give it all back if I could go back to the way I was. And I've encouraged people, if you want my life, let's get out here with some kerosene and I will pay you accordingly. But I can't find anybody that wants that life. Yes, if I'm responsible, you know, and that's what Chris is big on, personal responsibility. If I'm responsible with what I got, I can take care of my wife and kids and my medical needs until the day I die. But I have to be responsible. And that's a big thing. People just think that, well, he got X amount of money, which the $25 million is false. I don't have $25 million. I wish I did, but I don't. So I got to put a period on that. I never wanted my story tainted by money. Never. Every dollar that I have made from this book or from T-shirts or when I go speak, it all goes to a nonprofit because I never wanted it tainted by money. Brian, this book, Dead Man Breathing, is signed to you, and I would like to give it to you here and thank you so much for the opportunity. Great.
Thank you, Billy Jack. I appreciate that. And kind of what I'm hearing from you, bottom line, is Chris McDaniel's not really primarily an injury trial lawyer. He just stepped in, kind of stepped out of what he customarily does in order to help you at a time of need.
He chose the fight just like he's doing now.
My guest has been Billy Jack McDaniel, first cousin of Senate candidate Chris McDaniel, going up against incumbent Thad Cochran. Billy Jack, thanks for taking time to drop by and tell us your story and set the record straight.
Thank you, sir.
Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.